My name is Gregory. I'm from New Zealand, just outside of Surrey, and I'm doing a master's at UPI, looking at potential factors contributing to decline of muskrat in the province. So essentially what's occurred here is that over the past number of years, trappers have been reporting declining catches in areas where they've trapped for years, and they usually, annually get X amount of muskrats, give or take. But now they're really seeing that the abundance is much less than it should be. So they brought this to the attention of wildlife biologist Randy Dibley, as well as Professor Daryl Guignon. So, I mean, it's a cause for concern. Anytime a species isn't doing as well as it should, you want to know why, because it could be indicative of some kind of environmental problem. So, in 2008, in September, a study was commissioned. And as part of it, there was a graduate student was to do the research, and that's me. So since then, I've been looking at some of the various factors that could be contributing. We're looking at things like disease, predators, and as well as potentially habitat contamination. These were things that, in consultation with university officials, wildlife biologists, and trappers as well, they thought these could be things that could be contributing. So since then, I've been collecting carcasses during the trapping season from various locations across the province. I've been looking at them in the lab for disease lesions. So basically, I would conduct a rough necropsy on the animal to see if there was any lesions that were indicative of diseases that are known to afflict muskrats in other areas. These include tularemia, Tisser's disease, ursiniosis. So I would have a look there, specifically the liver and the colon, because that's where most of the disease lesions are manifested. And when I was doing this, I would record also many parameters, so weight, length, the basic stuff. Um, the age and sex of the muskrat, so I get some idea of the population structure, and as well, if it's an adult female, breeding female, I would count the placental scars, so I would know how many young she's had in her life. Obviously, if there's any kind of change in reproductive output of the breeding females, this could have really serious implications in terms of population health. So I've done that, and when I was looking at these carcasses as well, I collected a variety of tissues, specifically liver tissue, for analysis for various contaminants, such as metals and pesticides. So these will be analyzed. It hasn't been done yet, but all the tissues are collected, and these will be analyzed in the lab to check the concentrations of these contaminants in the liver tissue. As well, I did a lot of live trapping and tagging of muskrats this previous summer, with the idea that I would do this in specific areas, and then I would work with the trapper who goes in there in the fall and be able to analyze their catch to see what kind of return I got, to see what proportion of the population that I tag in the summer is still alive in trapping season, to get some sort of estimate of mortality in the late summer, early fall. So that is pretty well what I've done to date, and we're trying to incorporate some observational stuff to try to assess predator impact. Muskrats are prey to a lot of species, such as bald eagles, foxes, raccoons, coyotes. Most things that are predatory species that live around a marsh will eat a muskrat, be it a juvenile muskrat or an adult muskrat. So, and this is one of the things that trappers are fairly adamant, that a lot of them really feel like this is what's going on with muskrats and PEI, because a lot of these populations of predators are doing really well now. I mean, in the early 80s, there was less than a dozen, maybe even half a dozen bald eagle nests on PEI, and now the bald eagle population is doing really well. In the early 80s or mid 80s, coyotes came to PEI, and now they're doing really well. Raccoon populations are doing well. So when you get a lot of predators living in and around a marsh, this potentially could be detrimental to muskrat populations. So we're going to try to at least start to assess the role of predators in the muskrat decline, perceived decline. We're trying to do some night vision observational work and participate in a bald eagle survey, hopefully this spring, to see if we can identify muskrat remains in the bald eagle nest, to try to quantify how many muskrats they're eating, that sort of thing. So this is the kind of work we're doing, ultimately with the goal of trying to identify a factor or factors that could be contributing to this decline of muskrat on PEI. Well, I've examined carcasses from almost 30 marshes across the province, from as far west as Nail Pond, and from as far east as Big Pond. So I got a pretty good spread across the province. I did the live trapping work in Larkin's Pond, which is on the New Fraser system, Docks Marsh, which is on Botten River, and the Indian River Impoundment, which I tried to get a little bit of a spread across the province, and I tried to represent different levels of harvest that I had from the previous year. Larkin's was one of my higher samples, Docks was kind of in the middle, and Indian River was fairly low. So that's where I did the live trapping and tagging work, was in those three marshes predominantly. But again, this year I have collected carcasses from several marshes, not as many as last year, but I do have muskrat carcasses to look at from a variety of marshes across the province.